that you simply cannot allow the Houthis, you cannot allow Iran to try and undo the international political, economic, security system. So that is what leaders have chosen to take an action on. This is a very delicate moment and one that obviously could quickly and easily spiral out of control. And yet at the same time, leaders in London as well as here in Washington clearly feel that despite the risks, the global supply chain, indeed global stability, depends on removing this threat to the shipping lanes.
What do you think they're going to have to do to make sure that their so-called surgical strikes on Houthi positions don't trigger a wider conflagration?
Well, precisely targeting is going to be key, and it's important, obviously, and we've seen the tragic collateral consequences of a number of the Israeli strikes, and it's important that the U.S., the UK ensure that any potential civilian casualties are minimized, and then also just to communicate to whether it is Tehran, to other regional powers and groups. This is not a moment, and you've heard both Secretary Blinken as well as President Biden explicitly say as much. This is not a moment to test the U.S., the UK's resolve so that any ideas that they have that they are going to try and exploit this moment, hopefully are put to bed.
Well, you say don't test our resolve, but they have been doing so, and they continue to do so because fundamentally they think, well, you are weak, you're corrupt, history's on our side, and we'll do what we think is right in this part of the world, particularly because we've seen thousands and thousands of Palestinians being killed with, in quotes, your blessing.
Well, I think they would be mistaken. There is a significant distinction between the kind of provocations that we have seen over the last several weeks and indeed months, and trying to mount more direct threats both on the U.S. as well as on other interests. Look, this is a situation which obviously is very fragile, and yet I think what we have seen demonstrated in Ukraine is how the Western alliance, when put to the test, can indeed come together and can ensure that the international system, that the rule of law is defended. And I think what we have witnessed in the Middle East over the last several weeks is a real test of that system. And that's what is understood here in Washington as well as at Downing Street, that you simply cannot allow the Houthis, you cannot allow Iran to try and undo the international political, economic, security system. So that is what leaders have chosen to take an action on.
Brett, you say it's understood in Washington, but I'm wondering to what extent that is the case anymore, given the increasingly isolationist tendencies of some in Congress, particularly on the Republican side, and of Donald Trump saying the moment he gets into the White House, all the funding for Ukraine stops. He gets Zelensky and Putin into a room and it's done within an hour, and there is a threat to NATO. And the Iranians, the Chinese, the Russians and others know this. They can smell it in the air.
Well, there's something distinctly different about what has transpired in the Middle East. We have seen over 150, I believe at last count, attacks on U.S. forces, U.S. vessels in the region. This is not Ukraine. This is not even Israel and Gaza. You have a situation where Iran and Iranian-backed groups are trying to directly challenge the United States. And obviously something we have seen in recent years, but the scale of those attacks, the frequency of them have obviously increased substantially, and you have to respond. You have to ensure that this does not continue on the same trajectory.
What about the danger of blowback? How concerned should the U.S. be about
It is
that?
there. There is no question. This is an operation that can also serve to justify further efforts by the Iranians and by Iranian-backed groups to try and mount more attacks. I mean, we heard just in the last day that Hezbollah was looking to mount attacks outside of the Middle East against the U.S., against American interests. So I think we're in a very, very dangerous period. We're traversing very dangerous waters, both figuratively and literally. And it is crucial, I think, that we proceed with the utmost caution.
What would you like to hear from President Biden when he addresses the nation soon?
Well, I think it is to the question that you asked before. It is important to remind America of why we are engaged in this, that not only our interests, but indeed our forces in the region are at stake, and that once again, an effort be made, as it was at the outset of the Ukraine conflict, albeit it may have waned a bit, to stir the national resolve towards this mission.